And good morning, and welcome to Backchannel. It's 9 o'clock, and here on the West Coast, certainly, and it's 12 o'clock Eastern, and hopefully you're having a really nice morning. It's the 30th of March, Wednesday morning. I'm Anthony, here in Los Angeles. Sarah's producing from Brooklyn, and we have a whole host of things to discuss with you. We mainly talk about, what's happening in the news, and stuff that can hopefully enlighten you and educate you and inform you and entertain you all at the same time. So it just kind of saves you going on that kind of crazy news hunt, like the doom scrolling and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's very nice to spend the morning with you. If you want to get in touch, you can wake up your Echo Show, say the word say, and then your message. If you don't have an Echo Show and you're just listening on an Echo speaker and you want a message, then go to backchannel.tv in your browser. That's backchannel.tv. And then finally, and not least, YouTube also has a live stream where you can comment and watch the show there as well. So no excuse not to be involved, not to kind of enjoy what we have going here. We've got so many things to look at this morning. We're going to look at Russia, obviously, Ukraine, Donald Trump trying to yet again get Russia to do his bidding. It seems so crazy to me that people aren't really making a big thing out of this, but here it is. We're also going to look at the population. Apparently Manhattan lost a population percentage more than any other major US county, so that's something to look at as well. We've got the morning papers to look through as well, so we'll see what's happening there. We're going to go to Alabama first, I think. Alabama criminals went to create havoc at Panama City Beach, says the mayor. Half the arrests were made this weekend were people from Alabama. That's interesting, isn't it? You never really know how kind of organized crime is working until you kind of get under the skin of it. The AZ Central bill to prevent bans on artificial turf goes to Ducey is a headline there. And anything else? No. And finally, Chicago Sun-Times. They lead this morning with Biden signs the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. Now, that is actually something that I did want to mention. It's very interesting. It's very important, obviously. This is Joe Biden yesterday. He signed the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, invoking during a Rose Garden ceremony the lives of the Chicago youth, whose lynching helped spur the modern civil rights movement. And Ida B. Wells, the Chicago journalist who crusaded against lynching in the years after the Civil War. Well, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, championed for years by Representative Bobby Rush, whose district sweeps part of Chicago's South Side, defines lynching as a federal hate crime for the first time. The bill was more than 100 years in the making, with Congress not acting as race-related hate crimes persisted. One of the latest, Biden noted, was Ahmaud Arbery, the black jogger murdered in Georgia in 2020. He said, from the bullets in the back of Ahmaud Arbery to countless other acts of violence, countless victims known and unknown, the same racial hatred that drove the mob to hang a noose brought that mob carrying torches out of the fields of Charlottesville just a few years ago. He said racial hate isn't an old problem, it's a persistent problem. Lynching is not a relic of the past, said Vice President Kamala Harris, who as a California senator was the lead on anti-lynching measures with Senator Cory Booker and Senator Tim Scott. Racial acts of terror still occur in our nation, and when they do, we must all have the courage to name them and hold the perpetrators to account. The measure is named for Till, the black youth from Chicago, who at the age of 14 was brutally murdered in 1955 by white men while visiting relatives in Mississippi. Till's cousin, Wheeler Parker Jr. of South Suburban Summit, who was with Till when white men were abducted, when white men abducted Till from the house where they were staying, was at the bill signing, along with about 10 members from Till's extended family, including Annie Wright of Suburban Countryside and Bertha Thomas from Auburn Gresham on the city's south side. Biden paid a tribute to Wells' relentless pursuit of anti-lynching law at the top of his speech, while Chicago native Michelle Duster, the great-granddaughter of Wells, looked on. I mean, it is frustrating that it's taken 100 years to make this happen. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what is it about the law here that refuses to address issues that are so blatant? Anything to kind of stamp out racism in any form, and it seems to just take forever. Wells, Biden said, was at the White House in 1898 to make the case for a federal anti-lynching law, which was never to be until Tuesday. Duster, when she spoke, said her great-grandmother, born to slaves in 1862 in Mississippi, and who would become a renowned civil rights activist and journalist, once said, "Our country's national crime is lynching." Well, since Wells was at the White House 124 years ago, Duster said there have been more than 200 attempts to get anti-lynching legislation enacted. In this era, hate crime accusations have gained traction because of the ubiquity of cameras, either handheld devices or security lenses, providing visual testimony. Till's lynching on the 28th of August 1955 became a turning point in civil rights history because a key decision by his mother gave credibility that Till was a victim of lynching. His mother insisted on an open casket for his funeral so the world could see Till's body and witness the deadly results of race-based violence. So there it is. That's, something very special that's obviously happened at the White House. It's historic. And at the same time, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that this is long overdue, long overdue. It's 13 minutes after 9 o'clock this morning here on Backchannel. And Kay's joined us for the first time. Hello, Kay in Ohio. Welcome to Backchannel. If you have an Echo show, which I think you do, you could just talk to it and therefore talk to me. Just say your wake-up word, then say, and then your message, whatever it is. Hey, Anthony, who are you? There you go. Well done. I just feel that it's important that we kind of, start with this anti-lynching bill. It's definitely something I wanted to mention yesterday when it happened, and we didn't get a chance to really, but this is, it's essential. And I feel that, I wonder if this bill was in place, how that might have changed the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, which was clearly a lynching. I mean, just the way that happened was just like a blatant lynching. But I mean, I wonder how this bill might have prevented Ahmaud Arbery's death. Do you think the perpetrators would have considered the fact that the bill was a crime? Or do you think they would have done it anyway? Since Wells was at the White House 124 years ago, Duster said there have been more than 200 attempts to get an anti-lynching legislation enacted. In this era, hate crime accusations have gained traction because of the ubiquity of cameras, as we said. And I think that, I've said this for years, that body-worn cameras by the police and cameras anywhere and everywhere are only helpful. And in England, where I'm from, we have cameras everywhere. I mean, there's thousands. There's more cameras in London than in any other city in the world. And, most of the crime fighting is done with CCTV. That's kind of how they do it, Biden said between 1877 and 1950, more than 4,400 black people were murdered by lynching, most in the South, but some in the North as well. That's a lot of folks, he said, and a lot of silence for a long time. Lynching was pure terror to enforce the lie that not everyone belongs in America, not everyone is created equal. Innocent men, women and children hung by nooses in trees, bodies burned and drowned and castrated. Their crimes? Trying to vote, trying to go to school, trying to own a business or preach the gospel. False accusations of murder, arson and robbery, simply being black. Rush, who is serving his last term, caps his congressional career with the Emmett Till Act becoming law. He pushed for the measure for years. In a statement, Rush said Emmett Till meant so much to the city of Chicago. The signing of this bill is a victory for the city of Chicago, a victory for America, and a victory for Black America in particular. So there we go. That's the story, and something we'll come back to, in time and over time here on Backchannel. Interesting story about Joe Manchin that's being reported in the Rolling Stones, in the Rolling Stone magazine, which I found particularly interesting because I find Manchin to be completely fascinating because Biden's pitching this new tax on people with more than $50 million, and Manchin won't support it. Manchin is one of these people who just fundamentally is very wealthy himself and has, lives on a yacht and has his whole, despite presiding over the second poorest state in the country, West Virginia. And here we go again. I mean, just keeps happening. You know, Manchin is just like one of these guys who will not be told. You know, you can't tell him. You can't tell him. So we'll talk a little bit more about him in a little while. Excuse me, choking. And then, of course, there's this story about the population shift in New York City, which is very interesting. This is a significant population shift last year, apparently. 4 of New York City's 5 counties, losing a greater percentage of people than almost any other major county in the United States, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Yes, data analysis suggests to migration as the primary factor behind such significant shifts in population from 2020 to 2021. But not every county is down. The Bureau found at least 65% of metropolitan areas felt a population increase as well. New York metro area led all other areas in popular losses, according to the census data. The combination of New York, Newark, and Jersey City reflected a population loss of more than 385,000 people, almost double that of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Anaheim. And you know, this is obviously pandemic related for lots of other reasons. And Sarah, you can pop in for this if you want, because obviously you're in this area and you'll kind of probably understand it a bit better than I do. But they reckon that the patterns we observed in domestic migration shifted in 2021, according to Christine Hartley, Assistant Division Chief for Estimates and Projections in the Census Bureau's Population Division. She said, even though over time we've seen a higher number of counties with natural decrease in net international migration continuing to decline in the past year, the contribution of domestic migration counteracted these trends, so there was actually more counties growing than losing population. Breaking this trend was New York City. In a closer look at the city's changing population numbers by county, Manhattan had the greatest percentage drop, according to the census data. And the island saw a 6.9% decline between April and July. Manhattan wasn't alone in the top 10 counties for percentage decline. Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, they were on that list as well. Hudson County in New Jersey, Hudson and Queens both recorded around a 3% dip in population. I mean, a lot of people did move to the West Coast, you know, because they were conscious of the fact that when the lockdown happened, it was actually easier to be in California, you know, because of the sunshine and the consistent weather and not having to be stuck indoors and the beaches being open and not feeling like a prisoner in your own home. You know. Between that same 15-month period, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx also made up 4 of the 10 counties with the largest drop in population by straight numbers, the census data shows. Manhattan took the second spot with a drop of 117,000 residents. Brooklyn and Queens took 4th and 5th. They lost 95,000, 74,000, and a few spots down in 8th was the Bronx with a decline of 47,000. And then, of course, the other thing we mustn't forget is a lot of these are also people losing their jobs. And the cost of rent in these areas is very high. And people simply can't afford to stay where they are, you know? And consequently, we find that we're living in a, we're living in a world now where people are borrowing, credit cards are maxed out, COVID pandemic relief money has been stopped. And I think that the people are at a bit of a crossroads now as to what to do in terms of understanding the, what's important in terms of having a roof over your head and hopefully a job, but being able to do it in a way that you do not live beyond your means. And the tragedy of that is now that beyond your means, people's means is just very basic, isn't it? You know, people don't really want for much. Hi, Sarah.
Hello. I'm
always excited to see what kind of hair you're bringing to the show.
This is my hair on a regular basis. Yeah, I definitely.
It's quite superb. Is it shaved all the way around the back?
Yeah, here, hold on. I can take off my headphones so you can see that.
Oh, yes. Look at that. But you're shorter on one side than the other.
No, it's the same all around.
Is it?
Kind of.
It looks longer on this side.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
I think it is. Did you get bored halfway through and leave?
Yes,
is that what happened?
100%.
That happens to me. I shave my own head twice a week.
Oh yeah, I think it's just kind of the light. right now because this side is darker, but this was like down to my skin, so it's just growing back right
Very
now.
exciting.
Yes.
So we're just talking about New York City and the population drop, and I've been saying.
Yeah, I
that,
don't really feel that at all. I don't know where that's coming from.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
you feel like it's just as busy as it's ever been?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would think if people were really leaving, wouldn't rent be cheaper? You know, I feel like yeah, I don't know. I don't maybe because I live I mean Brooklyn's pretty populated, but yeah, I don't really notice that. Maybe they're more so talking about Manhattan and like a lot of like the upper class and like businesses and stuff leaving. But I still feel like the subways are just as crowded.
Right.
Maybe a little less than they were before, but like not noticeable.
Well, the island saw nearly a 7% decline between April 2020 and July 2021. New York City.
Wow.
And whereas Queens and the Bronx and Brooklyn, that's all about 3 to 3.5% drop.
Oh wow. All right. Well, oh man.
And it says that Brooklyn too. Yeah. I mean, I mean, this is the thing, is it's hard to tell when you live in a metropolis because, people work weird hours and they do shift work and there's always people around. But it's hard.
Well,
it's so hard to know.
Oh yeah, of course, and especially in a place like New York City that's always densely packed.
Yeah.
I think that people also really just want more space nowadays. The world is just such an unpredictable place, and I think people want to have like a big backyard and whatever. And so yeah, my cousins, they just bought a house for $100,000 over asking in New Jersey because like you can live in New Jersey and commute to the city, so it's a very, very popular place right now. So I think that's a big thing is people like want to be close to the city so they can still like make that type of income, but they want to have like the suburban life. And I guess New Jersey and Connecticut right now, I would think like their population increases because everybody from New York is like leaving for those states.
Have you always lived on the East Coast?
Yeah, I've never lived anywhere else.
But have you traveled much?
Oh yeah. I've been to LA a few times. I've been to Arizona, New Mexico, like the whole Pacific Northwest and the West Coast.
Do you get LA? Because a lot of people come here and they just don't get it.
I think it's a great city for me to visit. I feel like it's not a place where I would personally thrive as a person, but my best friend does live out there, so I do try and go there when I can, and a lot of the jobs I get are based in LA, but it's a very different life. Because, people obviously drive in New York City. There's cars parked right outside my apartment, but it's not like the main form of transportation for everybody. And in LA, it's everyone's driving. You kind of have to plan your day a little more. And I'm not used to that. Here, I can just like leave my apartment. I don't have to like think about like, oh, what's this going to be like or whatever. Is there going to be parking? But yeah, it's a different life, but beautiful weather, beautiful beaches. I mean, and great food. So
I think in your 20s, you're better off being in a metropolis, in London or New York. I think it's definitely
London's
better.
Great.
But in your 40s, I think California is better. I think it just changes.
Of course. I mean, my whole entire family is in Connecticut and New Jersey and New York, so I prefer to stay within like 2 to 3 hours driving distance for them. I mean, my 20s was spent in New York mostly, and now probably my 30s will be too, but I think everyone should visit the West Coast, or if you live on the West Coast, you should come visit the East.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
like,
Yeah.
and people are a little friendlier in LA, just a smidge.
Yeah,
Just
it's
a
true, and
teensy
it's the
bit.
same. In London, no one talks to each other. I mean, really, it's complete
Really?
disconnect. Oh yeah, no strangers will ever connect. With a look or a glance or a hello. It's a very, very
Really?
not a solitary one.
The last time I was there, people were really friendly. Everyone seemed nice.
Did you look like you were in pain? I often find it's only if you have like an incident that people kind of come to you.
No.
You didn't get
I
your leg
looked like a
trapped in an
regular.
escalator or something, no?
No, I looked like a college student on a study abroad trip.
Yeah, it's a shame because part of the reason why I moved here is because I used to say hi to everybody in London and they just, they all thought I was a pervert. And yeah, I moved to LA and everyone's either a pervert or is just very confident, which is wonderful.
Yes, 100%. I will say in LA, everybody seems to have like a thing. Everybody has.
Well, like something wrong with them.
No, like the entertainment industry, it seems like everyone's like an actor or a model or trying to be this. And here in New York, I feel like everyone has more of like a side hustle.
Yeah.
Like they're not trying to be like, but anyways, I do love LA. No hate towards your city.
No, that's very sweet of you. I mean, I think the side hustle here is definitely a thing. People just maybe don't talk about it, they just keep it on the lowdown.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a very, the way you even get jobs in LA is different. The way, that happens. But Silver Lake is a great place. Echo Park. Those are lovely.
All the hipster places, Sarah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Those
Echo Park, Silver Lake.
No.
Yeah, all of those areas. That's all Hipsterville.
Really?
Yeah, you'd fit in like a glove on a fine hand.
Great. I can't wait. That sounds lovely.
My sister lives in Silver Lake, and she's hugely affected. But that's kind of what happens up that end of town, which is fine. It's kind of cute. I saw a guy who was so hipster the other day. He actually had 2 beards. So I was like, oof, that's a lot.
That sounds like a lot of work.
2 coats and 2 beards.
Ooh, isn't it like 90 degrees in LA right now?
It's pretty warm, yeah. It's actually 55 right now, but I mean,
really?
It's early in the morning,
Right.
But it'll be nice. It'll be nice. I've put the air conditioning on in here. I don't know if you can hear it, but it kind of.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
We have the heat on over here.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I still can't get my head around the scale of this country. The fact that you're basically like 100 countries wide.
Oh, we really are though. I mean, oh my gosh, don't come after me for saying this. I don't think we should all secede from everything, but like, you are right. We really, even Manhattan to Brooklyn feels like a different country.
Yeah. England's a little bit like that when you travel. Different towns and different villages and different cities have very different vibes. But the difference is you could literally get from the bottom of England to the top of England in 6 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Covered the whole country. It's like, okay, that's that done then. Whereas here you could just keep driving forever.
Oh, yeah. But England is such a beautiful country. It really is great. I do like going to the theater there.
I like the theater there as well. I used to go to the theater 2 or 3 times a week when I was living there.
And public transportation is so much better.
It's fine under the subway's good, but the traffic just moves at like 3 miles an hour.
So
the buses are terrible.
But it's such the last time I was there, my friends and I just kept like marveling at the tube because here, like, you could just, use your Oyster card and like, boom, you're done.
Yeah.
And it was just very easy, convenient. Like they had stations that actually go from east to west. Like it's just very good public transportation. So that's
you don't even need an Oyster card anymore. They've actually stopped all that. Now you just use your credit card or your debit card.
Oh,
and you just tap it and then it works out what you've done per day, and then if it was cheaper to have an Oyster card equivalent, then they just charge you the Oyster card amount. So you don't even need to get an Oyster card anymore. The only reason people get those is like if work need to pay for them and stuff, and they need to.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, you just ping in and out with your credit or debit card, or your phone, with your contactless.
The last time I was there was 2012, so it's been a while.
Yeah, that was the year of the Olympics. They got a lot of stuff done for that. They spent a lot of money on the city for that.
Oh, yes, I remember.
There's a new train line, if you want to go east to west, that is opening in the next month, and they've been building it for the last 15 years. And it's called the Elizabeth Line.
Okay.
When it was being built, it was called Crossrail, and now they've named it the Elizabeth Line after the Queen. And it basically goes east-west. It's very deep, all new stations, all new trains, and very high-tech.
Wow.
All Wi-Fi. And and also they're very fast. The trains are very fast. So you can basically now get east to west and west to east in nearly half the time because the trains are so fast.
Wow. New York, are you listening?
Right.
Yeah, can you hear me? Because that sounds amazing. And even the fact that, is it the Waterloo station where they have those glass doors?
Yeah.
So like there's no gap between the train and the platform.
It's the Jubilee line that has that. It prevents you from falling onto the track. Yeah, the new Elizabeth line has that as well.
Wow.
I mean, I think that's great because I used to get very anxious on the trains.
Yeah, but I feel like we could take notes from what y'all are doing because our subway system is filled with rats.
It is.
Water damage.
Yeah, I quite like the New York subway. I mean, the LA subway looks like the New York subway, except it's got no people and no rats. Like, nobody uses it. So it looks like the New York subway when it was first opened. Yeah. Like brand new, shiny silver trains.
Oh,
and
wow.
Like, nobody goes on it here.
Oh, yeah. No, nobody goes on it. Yeah. I, the whole time I was there, I never took public transportation.
No.
Not once.
It's not good. You have to have a car here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a license, but I don't drive, so.
Right. But if you came to LA, would you rent a car? Or would you
Depends
Uber?
on how long I'm there for and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I have thought about being bi-coastal and just spending like 3 months out of the year in LA if my employment needs me over there. And then I would maybe like rent a car or whatever. But yeah, I'm not, I like to not have to worry about like where I'm gonna park or like.
I don't think parking is the problem here in LA. There's plenty of places to park. It's more timing it so that if you get in the rush hour traffic, then it's just going to take you forever,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I've never done that, fortunately. I don't really go out, to be honest. I just sit here and talk to you. Yeah, that's basically my life is this little box.
I mean, sounds like a really sad life.
Terrifying. I mean,
because I'm not here all the time.
Who would want this? Nobody.
I know, right?
I'm going to DHL today. That's like a big, exciting journey for me. It's like I've got a whole package to post to Italy. And I can't stop thinking about it. It's like the biggest thing to happen to me all week.
Wow, I'm going to see a Broadway show tonight.
Are you? What are you seeing?
Plaza Suite.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, I hope it's good. I haven't really heard anything about it, but yeah. I haven't been to a Broadway show in a while, so that'll be nice.
I see that Tootsie is about to open here, and I texted my friend, the theatre critic, to say, is Tootsie any good? And he said no.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of... I think it's very apparent that movie was made in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think now it's a little transphobic.
Yeah.
And we should not be doing musicals like that.
Yeah.
But my dad will disagree. And he will say, but it's not that. And I think I'd like to see some newer, fresh ideas on Broadway.
Yeah. 100%. My friend Mark said, nope, like Mrs. Doubtfire, it's forgettable. That was his 3-word review.
Oh, I did love Mrs. Doubtfire.
Did you?
I honestly,
But that's also a man in a dress.
I know. The way they did it, it was, I didn't mind that as much, but I do think, it is,
But But isn't
it
it
is
the
a little
same
like
storyline,
long.
if you think about it? Because in Tootsie, it's about an actor, a male actor who can't get work, so decides to dress up as a female to get work as an actor. And then
Oh, that's what it's about?
That's what it's about.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then, because the film with Dustin Hoffman is one of the great movies of all time. You really must see it. Yeah, it's one of the great inspired performances.
Really?
And he's a very convincing girl. He wears these amazing shiny teeth. And then Mrs. Doubtfire is about a guy who's separated from his kids in a divorce, right? And so the only way he gets to see his kids is to dress up as a nanny and get a job as a female nanny. So it's actually not a dissimilar storyline, is it? Would you consider either of those scenarios transphobic now that you know them? Pico.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, yeah. But I'd love to hear from like the trans community about what they think. Because, we're two cis people, but I would love to like know their thoughts. But even aside that, I would just love to see Broadway be a little more original and like do newer works that aren't just like, hey, we're making this movie into a musical.
I agree.
Yeah. But that's another show. That's another topic.
It's a whole other conversation.
Show. That really is.
I've got a few things that I want to see, but I feel like, I don't know, when I went to the theater the other day to go and see Lehman Brothers, such a schlap, the whole thing. It's just like, I'm so used to kind of being home and watching shows on TV. Like I watched Newsies on TV the other day and Hamilton on TV, and I hate to be the one to kind of devalue theatre because I'm a big fan and I grew up in it, but I mean, it's become psychologically just like getting there and going through it all and like having to put your physicality through this sitting in a small chair and not moving for 2.5 hours. I mean, these are all things that we could do without.
Yeah.
If we stayed at home. Maybe theatre in future should just be broadcast. They still haven't managed to capture a show with a camera. It's like that feeling you get when you're there, no matter how well they film it. Even Hamilton, for example, which I've seen so many times now, it just doesn't have the same effect, does it?
Yeah, but I think the Hamilton is like the closest.
Yeah.
I think that they did a really, really good job with that, considering, you know what I mean? And as someone who like, I've seen a lot of live shows, sometimes like it is really cool to like see them film it, like, and watching it from home. I just think that's like especially when like we obviously couldn't go to the theater because that is, you are sitting so close together during that time.
Yeah, it felt a bit weird. I went to see My Fair Lady was the first show I went back to see.
Oh yeah, do you have to wear a mask the whole time?
Yeah, which I would do anyway, wear a mask the whole time, whatever I'm doing. But I wore 2 masks actually that day for my 2 beards. And it was the most wonderful show. I was slightly nervous about American actors doing British accents. I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. And yet, I mean, they were terrible, the accents, but it was brilliant. The show was so good. It's a tour.
Well, Tom Holland was saying, he was like being interviewed and he was saying it's easier for British people to do American accents than it is for Americans to do a British accent.
Yeah.
And like when they're doing a British accent for so long, they end up sound like they're chewing on something because they're so not used to like having to do that. But to do the American accent, it's such a lazier.
It's easier because it's got some flow. I was watching Matthew McFadden on Succession the other day, and he's a British actor doing an American accent, and it's seamless. It's completely seamless. His American accent, you just wouldn't know. Yeah. Do you watch Succession?
I do not. But everybody is telling me it's like a really good show.
Yeah, I don't really watch it. I just dip in occasionally. I find it a bit too depressing. It's like.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just can't. I can't do it religiously, but I dip in occasionally. Like when there's nothing else to watch, I'll be like, I'll do an episode of Succession. Big fan of Brian Cox. You see, he's such an amazing guy.
Oh, okay.
And he's Scottish, actually. He's a big Scottish actor. So he's
Really?
the lead in Succession anyway.
Okay. All right.
But it's worth watching if you want to see rich people getting on your nerves. That's kind of,
Not my type of show, but
no same.
I'll leave it to other people to tell me what it's about and to
Yeah.
tell me the exciting things.
My favorite show of all time was actually a trans show. It was Transparent, which has obviously got a lot of criticism because Jeffrey Tambor was the lead in it, and he's not trans.
Oh, yes. That was problematic.
Did you like that show?
I did not watch that show.
It might be the greatest show on the television. It's on Amazon Prime. Yeah, it might be the single greatest show I have ever seen.
Wow, that says a lot.
She says to her dad, "Are you telling?" When she meets him in a dress for the first time, and she's like, "Are you telling me you've spent your whole life dressing up as a woman?" And he says, "No, I've spent my whole life dressing up as a man." It's quite
That's
good.
Powerful.
It's powerful. Yeah. So that's my recommendation of the day.
Okay.
There's 5 seasons to get through.
5 seasons.
And randomly, when I first moved to Los Angeles and I went for lunch in a diner, like a deli, they were filming Transparent Season 4 in there. And I'm in the background of my favorite show now, of episode 1 of Season 4. I'm actually in the background of my favorite show.
That is crazy.
Immortalized.
Wow, forever.
Forever.
Forever and ever.
That's advantage of living in Los Angeles, is that you might get in the back of your favorite show.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in New York it doesn't really happen as much, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of everywhere. They're filming everything everywhere here. It's like constantly filming. And I love the fact
there's
that
so many studios.
They don't even put signs up to say, please be quiet, we are filming. Like, everybody knows the protocol. Like, don't look in the camera, keep moving. Like, everybody's funny. Used to it here that it's just part of the culture.
I would just look at the camera.
Yeah, me too.
All right, I'll let you get back to the show.
Thank you. Well, you are the show. Don't be silly, but thank you. I appreciate that. All right. That's Sarah. I'm Anthony. This is Backchannel. 9:44 Pacific, 12:44 Eastern. Thank you for your messages. Lots of people pinging us, and let's take a look at what's happening. Wacky Tigers just jumped in as well. First time on the show. And Safe Badger is here as well. And William and Matt and Receptive Rooster and Choice Armadillo and Concerned Crab and Normal Coyote. Welcome to all these people. Catherine as well has dropped in, and Sean and Heather. Thank you for spending your morning with Backchannel as we continue our conversations and look through some of these stories. We've been discussing population growth in Manhattan. It lost 6.9% in 2021, the most of any major U.S. county. And this was the U.S. Census Bureau data that is starting to, get into the weeds of these conversations. Also, I wanted to look at the latest on Ukraine, which we'll do that in a couple of minutes, find out what's happening there. And let me just get this other thing up as well that we were looking at, because here it is. Putin has demanded the surrender of Mariupol. That's the latest on Ukraine, accusing Russia of attacking the Red Cross now, Ukraine is saying, which is terrifying, isn't it? The idea that would be a thing. Yes, he's in a call with his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, on Tuesday night. Vladimir Putin said Russia's shelling of Mariupol will end only when Ukrainian troops surrender. According to French officials, Putin had agreed to consider plans to evacuate citizens out of the southern Ukrainian city, which the Élysée Palace said had become a catastrophic situation. A statement from the French government said civilian populations must be protected and must leave the city if they wish to. They must have access to food aid, water, and medicines they need. This is a very degraded humanitarian situation linked to the siege of the city by the Russian armed forces. France, along with Turkey and Greece and several humanitarian groups, have presented the Russian president with a plan to evacuate the city. Officials said Putin told Macron that he would think about the proposal. However, in its readout of the call, the Kremlin said Putin had insisted to Macron that Ukrainian nationalist militants must surrender. I mean, that's the insanity of this entire story, isn't it? That really is the insanity of all of this. is that there aren't any nationalist militants. It's like he's basically made it up. And I feel like I just wonder whether he believes his own rhetoric. Does Putin genuinely believe that there are Nazis in Ukraine that need to be overthrown? Or is he just saying it? I think he's just saying it. Putin said in order to resolve the difficult humanitarian situation in this city, Ukrainian nationalist militants must stop resisting and lay down their arms. The statement added that Putin had given Macron detailed information about measures taken by the Russian military to provide emergency humanitarian assistance and ensure the safe evacuations of civilians from Mariupol. I mean, the death and the destruction there is just unprecedented. To describe this is it's almost impossible. Russia's been accused of intensifying its bombardment of the besieged Ukrainian city Chernihiv, I should say, despite claims the Kremlin would draw back out of respect for ongoing peace talks. Chernihiv's mayor said the Russians had lied and that they were continuing to heavily hit his city. He said they're saying reducing intensity, they're actually increased the intensity of strikes. And there was also continuing barraging of Kiev suburbs, Ukrainian officials said, although a defense ministry spokesman said there were some signs of troop movements away from the two cities. Russia's defense ministry said its forces were regrouping near Kiev and Chernihiv in order to focus on other key areas and complete the liberation of the breakaway Donbass region. I mean, this is what they're trying to segregate, that Putin wants to kind of split the country and get the Donbass region for himself. Russian forces struck a Red Cross facility in the southern Ukraine port city of Mariupol. An International Red Cross spokesperson confirmed an image being circulated showing an ICRC warehouse in Mariupol, but they do not provide any other information. I mean, this is so worrying, isn't it? That there's just zero respite for the people. And the level of death, the thousands of civilians that have been killed and the children that have been killed. I mean, it's none of it needed to happen, None of it. More than 4 million people have now fled Russia's utterly useless war or senseless war on Ukraine since the start of Russia's invasion on the 24th of February. The UN Refugee Agency said the figure surpasses the UN's initial estimate that the war could create up to 4 million refugees. More than 90% of them are women and children. The Kremlin played down hopes of an early breakthrough a day after peace talks in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine. They said, we cannot state that there was anything too promising or any breakthroughs. They said it was positive that Kiev had outlined its demands, but there was a lot of work to be done. I mean, I keep saying I just don't think that these peace talks are even genuine. I think that they're like a bit of a diversion, a distraction for people that just, they don't really care. Russia just wants to continue shelling. They're just engaging in peace talks to give the impression that they are open to discussion, but the reality is they're not. Putin's advisors apparently are too afraid to tell him the truth about how poorly the war in Ukraine is going and how damaging Western sanctions have been to Russia's economy, according to a US official. Apparently, US believes Putin is being misinformed by his advisors. The Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, hailed China as part of a new just democratic world order, ahead of a meeting with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. In his first visit to China since Russia invaded Ukraine last month, Lavrov said the world was living through a very serious stage in the history of international relations. Wang said Beijing and Moscow are more determined to develop bilateral ties and boost cooperation, and reaffirmed China's support for continued peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Well, Putin's approval ratings surged in March to levels not seen in 5 years as the war in Ukraine enters its second month, according to an independent survey. According to the Levada Center, Putin's job approval grew to 83% in March from 71% in February. The last time Putin reached similar approval ratings was in 2017. Isn't that crazy? So the Russian people are voting to say that Putin is doing a better job now than he was in February. 83% to 71%, if you can believe these figures. The UK has granted only 2,700 visas under its much-advertised Homes for Ukraine sponsorship scheme more than 2 weeks after its launch, according to Home Office figures. Meanwhile, Ukrainian refugees in Poland said they were baffled by the UK government's asylum rules, which they say appear designed more to keep people out than offer shelter to those fleeing war. Interesting. I mean, a lot of the countries that are claiming to want to support Ukraine, such as the UK, are, doing a lot of talk, a lot of chat about it. But in terms of the reality of what they're offering, it does seem pretty minimal. And yesterday, Volodymyr Zelensky again begged for the West to send more equipment, weapons and tanks and just stuff. He's just kept saying how delayed it was, Wacky Tiger says, I was trying to ask Sarah a question, but it didn't come through. I think it did come through, Wacky Tiger. Thank you very much. I think Wacky Tiger's question was, did you not watch it because it got a bad rap? Is that referring to Tootsie? Maybe. I think that was your question. Yeah, Tootsie is one. The thing is, you have to accept that there were films made before people woke up to the plight of, of issues, and just because they were made before, I think Tootsie was made in like '82 or something. It doesn't mean they should be, that they shouldn't be watched. I think it's a little bit like removing Confederate statues. Like, do you schmelz them or do you put them in a museum and say this is what the world used to be like? I think the latter is better. I think you should be educating people, and you should be giving people the opportunity to learn and understand the history, make sense of it all. Okay, let's have a little scroll down through your message. Oh, Sean is in as well. April's in Ohio. William's in Florida. Hello, William. Welcome to you. Safe Badgers here. Receptive Rooster. Karimas is listening. London and Stacey, of course. Great to know that you're part of Backchannel as we continue our conversations on this. What day is it? Oh, yeah, it's Wednesday. On this Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. I'm Anthony Davis. Let's continue our chats. Oh, there's a story that's just broken. Bruce Willis, it says, is to retire from acting after a diagnosis that will affect his it's aphasia diagnosis. It's a language disorder which affects his ability to communicate. Oh, that's a shame. A joint statement was posted on his family's social media accounts explaining that Willis had been experiencing some health issues and has recently been diagnosed with aphasia, which is impacting his cognitive abilities. It says, as a result of this and with much consideration, Bruce is stepping away from the career that has meant so much to him. They said, this is a really challenging time for our family and we are so appreciative of your continued love, compassion and support. We're moving through this as a strong family unit and wanted to bring his fans in because we know how much he means to you as you do to him. As Bruce always says, live it up, and together we plan to do just that. So that's the news of Bruce Willis. Literally just dropped a second ago. Let's have a look to see what aphasia really is, and then I can explain it. It's loss of ability to understand or express speech caused by brain damage, so it can occur suddenly after a stroke or a head injury or develop slowly from a growing brain tumor or disease. And aphasia, it affects a person's ability to express and understanding written and spoken language. That's very interesting. There's 3 types of it, apparently, and all 3 interfere with your ability to speak and or understand language. So it must be very hard for him. Anyway, this story just broke about just under an hour ago, really. So he's to retire from acting following his aphasia diagnosis. I wonder what movies he made recently. I think that he's been working up until very recently, but I think, this is often the way, you feel like something's wrong, you're not sure what it is, you get it checked out, and then you find out it's something completely different to what you were expecting. I do honestly think that it kind of shows that we're all fallible, we're all one race, we're all subject to getting illnesses and diseases and things that can cause us a huge trauma, or in this case, loss of career, inability to work. And I do think that things like dementia or aphasia, in this case, are sometimes the toughest things to live with, because, it doesn't kill you. You just have to live with it. And it means that people who are very communicative and eloquent and charismatic, like Bruce Willis, they lose that kind of fundamental aspect of their personality very quickly, and they cease to be themselves anymore. And I think that's really the toughest part of this type of a disease. So there it is. That's Bruce Willis's news. It's the 30th of March. Is there 31 days in March? I think so. Yeah. So it's almost the last day of the month. Isn't it? Quite interesting. We're going to do the US news update in just a couple of minutes, if that's okay. Sarah, we'll bung that on and let people know that I do this daily podcast that you can download. It's called the US News Update. It just kind of keeps you informed of everything that's happening across the United States news-wise. And so we play it here on the back channel just so you can kind of get a flavor of it. Conscious Bear just dropped in. Hello, Conscious Bear. Hello. You can talk to your Echo show. Just say the wake-up word, then the word say, and then your message. And you can talk to me like that. Aromatic Anteater just dropped in as well. Wacky Tiger, Safe Badger, April, and William, Matt, Choice Armadillo. Nice. Whimsical Barracuda is my favorite, I think, of the day. That's such a good one, isn't it? Okay, so let's jump on the US news update, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes with more of the latest news here on the back channel. Here it is. It's Wednesday, March 30. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. US health officials on Tuesday authorized a second COVID-19 booster dose of the two most commonly used COVID vaccines for people aged 50 and older, citing data showing waning immunity and the risks posed by Omicron variants of the virus. The US FDA said the new boosters, a fourth round of shots for most vaccine recipients of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, are to be administered at least 4 months after the previous dose. They are intended to offer more protection against severe disease and hospitalization. The FDA also authorized a second booster dose of the vaccines for younger people with compromised immune systems, those aged 12 and older for the Pfizer shot and 18 and older for Moderna's. The CDC backed the FDA authorization, recommending the additional shot, particularly for older people and those with underlying medical conditions that put them at higher risk. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden on Tuesday signed into law the first federal legislation to make lynching a hate crime, addressing a history of racist killings in the US after the Senate passed the bill earlier this month. The law is named for Emmett Till, a 14-year-old black boy who was brutally murdered in Mississippi in 1955. The bill makes it possible to prosecute as a lynching any conspiracy to commit a hate crime that results in death or serious bodily injury. With the bill signing, the president was addressing both unfinished business and horror in America's history, Vice President Kamala Harris said from the White House Rose Garden after the bill signing. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is, the US news update. Download it wherever you get your podcasts. It's 10 o'clock Pacific, it's 1 o'clock Eastern. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. You have me till, for another hour. And then your pal Hal is here to continue the conversations. We're looking at some of the biggest stories making the headlines today. Susan Collins, it says, the Republican from Maine, I think she is going to back Ketanji Brown Jackson for the Supreme Court role. She becomes the first Republican to support Jackson's confirmation. I mean, it's just tragic that, none of them are going to, really, let's be honest, because they're all a bunch of racists by the sounds of things. To not want to support a kind of landmark moment in the Supreme Court's history, a black female just not doing it, that in effect is a racist or a racist protest. It's like a non-vote is a racist protest. John Bolton has done an interesting thing. He's gone and contradicted Donald Trump, which is, only to be expected. The former national security advisor has revealed that he heard Donald Trump use the term burner phones several times, and they discussed how the disposable devices were deployed by people as a way of avoiding scrutiny of their calls. Yes, Bolton's intervention compounds Trump's difficulties amid a billowing controversy relating to 7 hours and 37 minutes that are missing in official call logs from the White House. The gap occurs in records made for the 6th of January last year, the day of the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Well, it was disclosed on Tuesday that the House committee investigating the insurrection is looking into a possible cover-up of White House records. Documents originally held by the National Archives and turned over to the committee earlier this year showed a gap in Trump's phone calls spanning precisely the period when hundreds of his supporters stormed the Capitol building. The 11 pages of records, including Trump's official daily diary and call log for the White House switchboard, reported that the House panel has begun an investigation into whether Trump used disposable burner phones to sidestep scrutiny. In a statement, Donald Trump said, "I have no idea what a burner phone is. To the best of my knowledge, I have never even heard the term." Not true, according to John Bolton. In an interview, the former national security advisor said that he recalled Trump using the term burner phones in several discussions and that Trump was aware of its meaning. Bolton added that he and Trump had spoken about how people have used burner phones to avoid having their calls scrutinized. Well, at the heart of the January 6th committee investigation is whether Donald Trump was directly involved in coordinating the breach of security at the Capitol on the day that Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election was to be certified by Congress. What Trump did, whom he talked to, as the insurrection was unfolding, is central to the inquiry. Well, the call logs obtained by the committee show that Trump spoke to several close associates on the morning of January 6, including his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and former senior advisor, Steve Bannon. His daily diary shows an entry at 11:17 a.m. for a phone call with an unidentified person, but after that, records fall silent. The next phone log is at 6:54 p.m. when Trump asked the White House switchboard to put him through to his communications chief, Dan Scavino. In those intervening 457 minutes, Trump supporters and white supremacist groups had broken through police barricades, forcing Vice President Mike Pence, who was overseeing the certification process, into hiding. A bipartisan Senate report connected 7 deaths to the attack, with more than 100 law enforcement officers injured. 7 people died that day. So, it's the revelation from the former national security advisor that raises pressure on Trump as lawmakers investigate the gaps in those phone logs. And let's be clear, Donald Trump is in pretty hot water right now for all sorts of reasons. But you may have heard that, he's already asking Putin to effectively do his bidding, wants him to search for dirt on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And it's like, you literally, as a human person, you are so blatant with your treasonous anti-American rhetoric. It's like, it doesn't make any sense to me that he could, in one breath, claim that, Russia is a witch hunt, and yet ask Putin out loud for help. It just makes no sense to me. And the reality is he's probably going to get away with it. He's going to get away with subverting the election. He really will. Despite pressing numerous government actors for weeks to abuse their official duty by helping him overturn the election, he then tried to intimidate his vice president into disrupting its formal conclusion. Was Trump dimly aware he was seeking to reverse a legitimate loss? I mean, this is what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with a guy who openly colludes with Russia, openly tries to overturn an election. And this is the thing that's so strange, is the coverage of Biden saying that, Putin can't remain in power, which was misread to suggest that the US is seeking regime change, which it isn't. The coverage of that was so huge, and yet Donald Trump said in an interview that he wanted Russian help to find dirt on Joe and Hunter Biden. He said it like yesterday, and that doesn't get the coverage, It's very interesting that we really are, dealing now with a guy who is so overtly mentally ill, where mental health is at the core of this, to be a malignant narcissist and to have all of these issues that, so clearly are, responsible for his decision making. And yet, it just makes no sense to me that people don't question him. He was interviewed by Just the News. He seized on an unsubstantiated claim about Biden obtaining a hefty payment from Elena Buturina, the former wife of the late mayor of Moscow, and he asked Putin to provide details. He said she gave him $3.5 million, so now I would think Putin would answer the question. I think he should release it. I think we should know that answer. Trump's lying, of course. He was referring to information from a partisan Senate report published just weeks before the 2020 election, which also focused on Biden's role on the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. Hunter Biden's legal team said that Biden had no interest in that firm that received the money, so the claim was paid that he was paid $3.5 million was false. In October 2020, Putin said he was unaware of any business ties between Biden and Buturina. The request of Putin, who's been widely condemned for launching an unprovoked and deadly invasion in Ukraine, was reminiscent of Trump asking the Russian government during the 2016 presidential election to find and release any emails belonging to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, his Democratic rival back then. Russia, he said, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing, he said at a news conference in July 2016, even as he faced questions about whether he endorsed foreign meddling in US elections. Trump later pressured the Ukrainian government to dig up dirt on Hunter and his father Joe, who was then seeking the Democratic presidential nomination, leading to the former president's first impeachment. Trump's remarks on Tuesday's interview come shortly after GOP lawmakers urged Biden to more forcefully punish Putin for waging war on Ukraine, only to have Trump praise Putin. He said, I went in yesterday and there was a television screen and I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful, Trump told a conservative podcaster, within hours of Russian troops beginning their deadly assault in Ukraine. Recently, he shifted his tone by blaming both Biden and criticizing Putin for the war. He said just when he thought it couldn't get worse, Biden totally failed to deter Russia's disgraceful invasion of Ukraine, Trump said on Saturday. All of those people are dead. Putin's heinous attack on a proud and sovereign nation shocks the very conscience of every person of goodwill. But the thing is, a lot of this is fundamentally connected to Trump, and Trump buddying up with Putin, siding with Putin, making a friendship with Putin. And when Trump lost the election, Putin then felt like he wasn't in control of America anymore, Just looking at some more of your messages. Elizabeth has popped in from Maine. Hello, Elizabeth. Busy Cougar is listening too. Bashful Hare. Ari, Fix Rattlesnake, and Delirious Whale, welcome. Gainful Pig. Oh, Delirious Whale says hi. Hi. Nice to see you. I mean, I can't see you, but you can see me. And Wacky Tiger says, Are my questions not connecting? No, they are connecting. I'm seeing your questions, Wacky Tiger. Feel free to keep sending questions. Just wake up your device. If you've got an Echo Show, say the word "say" and then your message. That's kind of how it works here. And we can chat in the nicest way possible. All right, let's see what else I have to offer you here. Story earlier about the Red Cross feeding refugees and being attacked. And lots of coverage of, Trump. I mean, Trump's in the news for several reasons today. People are basically saying he's a traitor. He does not love this country or any of the people in it. He loves only himself, yet millions support him. They would rather see America destroyed than the empowerment of people outside themselves. The other subject that I thought was kind of interesting, related to this in some way, was a new poll that suggests that political polarization in the US was evident and intensifying long before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic 2 years ago. Americans were already deeply divided about a multitude of issues, with differing opinions concerning healthcare, immigration, voting rights, gun reform, and climate change, often leaving little room for collaboration across the aisle. Well, polling shows that the emergence of the novel coronavirus in 2020 exacerbated the rift, pushing Americans further apart on key pandemic response efforts. This is surveys from Pew Research Center last year. It found that in the early months of the pandemic, about 6 in 10 Democrats and Democrat-leading independents believed the virus was a major threat to the health of the US population, compared with only a third of Republicans and GOP-leaning independents. Well, that 26-point gap would ultimately grow to approximately 40 points by the fall, researchers found. Yes, over the last 2 years, few issues have been more divisive than the pandemic and related policies, from the raging debate over mask use to the ongoing push to get Americans vaccinated. They say among all factors in the prevention of severe COVID-19 and death, vaccination has been key. Unvaccinated Americans are several times more likely to be hospitalized and die, and those living in rural areas, as well as conservatives and Republicans, were among the most hesitant to be vaccinated, according to a September 21st ABC News Washington Post poll. For unvaccinated Americans, the decision to not wear a mask or follow other restrictions ultimately caused increased transmission, which in turn resulted in more severe outcomes, experts say. The end result is a gulf in COVID-19 death rates between red and blue states, one that particularly amplified when examining and least vaccinated states. So, this is something that we've worried about for a while, isn't it? That we've thought about, we've worried about. And we're like, is it the case? Is it the case that we are going to effectively see more Republicans getting sick than Democrats because they don't believe the science? Well, in the United States, COVID-19 has become a political issue and people's political beliefs strongly influence their behavior, said David Dowdy, an infectious disease epidemiologist at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He said political divides in our thinking about COVID are much stronger than in many other countries. Although politicization of the virus likely played a significant role in the differing death rates, due to varying approaches to restrictions and vaccination efforts, experts say a myriad of other issues also contributed, including access to adequate health care and the disproportionate impact of the virus on communities of color. Vaccination rates and receptivity to mitigation measures have also been influenced by factors including misinformation. It's been nearly a year since the COVID-19 vaccines became available to every American last April, after initially being offered to health workers and older populations when supplies were still limited. However, vaccination rates differ markedly between states that voted for the former President Trump, after being initially, to those that voted for President Biden, paralleling the partisan lines that have divided the country. Data sourced from the CDC shows that the 10 states with the highest vaccination rates all voted for Biden, while 9 of the 10 states with the lowest vaccinations all voted for Trump. The lone exception was Georgia, which narrowly went for Biden by less than a quarter of a percentage point. Georgia was, of course, presided over by legislator Brad Raffensperger, who Trump tried to extort to get an extra 7,000 votes from. Do you remember? Yeah, that happened as well. Just let's not forget that. An ABC News analysis of federal data found that, on average, the death rates in states that voted for Trump were more than 38% higher than states that voted for Biden. Think about that for a moment. 38% more people died in Trump states than Biden states. In addition, in the 10 states with the lowest percentage of full vaccinations, death rates were almost twice as high as that of states with the highest vaccination rates. Over the span of the last 10 months, in the 10 states with the lowest vaccination rates, where between 50 and 54.5% of the total population had been vaccinated, there was an average of 153 COVID-19 related deaths. Per 100,000, sorry. So in contrast, during the same period, the 10 states and jurisdictions with the highest vaccination rates, which all voted for Biden, there was an average of about 82.2 related deaths per 100,000 residents. In all 10 states, about 75% of residents had been fully vaccinated. There are a few reasons why we're seeing such differences in death and vaccination rates. The obvious one is that both vaccinations and other forms of COVID-19 mitigation have become heavily partisan, according to Seth Maskett, a professor of political science and the director of the Center on American Politics at the University of Denver. According to experts, political polarization has led to different responses and attitudes with respect to the pandemic. And while in the early months of the pandemic, many Democratic governors strongly promoted stay-at-home orders, masking initiatives, and other mitigation measures, Trump and some other Republican governors sought to de-emphasize the seriousness of the threat of the virus, prioritizing instead the economy and the value of independence. So are you somebody who, like me, feels that, the misinformation, Trump saying that it was a Democrat hoax and that, bleach could kill it and a light shining from the inside? Do you think that any of those things, do you think they helped or they didn't help? Do you think that Trump has blood on his hands because he didn't take it seriously, because he was more interested in the election and winning the election, and he couldn't see that the pandemic could bring people together, and instead he chose to split people apart? Grandiose Fish is here. Elizabeth and Busy Cougar, Bashful Hare, Ari, all first time on the show, which is great. Thank you. Wonderful to have you joining us on Backchannel. I'm Anthony. It's 19 minutes after 10. Let's continue this conversation, talking a little bit about Donald Trump and, the reality of of what he's facing right now, I mean, the guy is broke, Trump is broke, effectively. He's got issues now with John Eastman. This is after the federal judge David Carter reached a remarkable conclusion only 2 days ago. He on Monday. He said that Donald Trump and attorney John Eastman launched a campaign to overturn a Democratic election, an action unprecedented in American history, and thank goodness for that. Everything about Carter's stinging 44-page rebuke of Trump, Eastman and others should be stunning and unprecedented. We don't want to live in a society in which any of the actions surrounding the 2021 insurrection are normal, accepted, or met without scrutiny. I mean, think about this for a second, Just think about this for a second. A president of the United States attempted to overturn a legitimate election, and people seem to carry on like it's business as usual. He incited a violent attack on the US Capitol. People seem to carry on like it's business as usual. Seem to be no consequences. Well, Judge Carter's decision reminds us how close the country came to the abyss. The legal question before Carter was fairly narrow: whether the House committee investigating the insurrection at the Capitol could obtain 111 emails sent to and from Eastman, the former dean of Chapman Law School, who provided political and legal counsel to Trump. Carter methodically examined each of the legal arguments and concluded that of the 111 emails, only 10 were covered by an evidentiary privilege and therefore didn't need to be handed over to the January 6th committee. But more importantly than Carter's ultimate conclusion, though, is that his opinion succinctly tells the tale of the real-life nightmare we all lived, the one in which our former president tried to take our representative democracy from us. It says Carter's decision reminds us how close our country came to the abyss and how if we fail to examine what happened, January 6 will repeat itself. Carter spent dozens of pages dissecting Eastman's claims that the emails in question were covered by attorney-client privilege and the work product privilege, but it's worth pointing out a few more startling and yet entirely correct legal conclusions. First, with respect to whether Trump tried to obstruct an official proceeding, which is of course a crime, Carter concluded it was more likely than not that President Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct the joint session of Congress on the 6th of January. As Carter highlights, in our government, leaders are elected, not installed, and yet Trump tried to subvert this fundamental principle. Second, and relatedly, Carter determined that given the evidence, it's more likely than not that President Trump and Dr. Eastman dishonestly conspired to obstruct the joint session of Congress on the 6th of January. I mean, that really is the fundamental thing, isn't it? That really is the fundamental thing here. The big question is, of course, whether any of this means that Trump and Eastman and others will be on the receiving end of federal criminal incidents, or indictments, I should say. Maybe, but not certainly. Carter has concluded that it's more likely than not that criminal behavior occurred, and that's a different and lower standard than the one prosecutors would have to prove if they decide to bring criminal charges, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And the January 6th committee doesn't have the power to bring criminal charges. It will finish gathering evidence and then come out with a report and decide whether or not to recommend that the Justice Department bring criminal charges. Well, the Justice Department will and must then make its own independent assessment. They say we are, in other words, more than a few steps away from a criminal indictment. And that's the reality here, is that there is no precedent for a president who overturns or attempts to overturn an election. There's nothing in law to suggest that would ever happen. It takes an authoritarian like Trump, an extremist, an autocrat, to want to do something that is so abhorrent and so against the very fabric of American freedom that the Founding Fathers never considered it, Never considered it. Many of us are understandably focused on whether the Justice Department will bring federal charges. We should also turn our focus to some preventative measures. As Carter reminds us, we experienced a coup in search of a legal theory. As much of it played out before our eyes and is already public, we also knew about Eastman's plans to thwart peaceful transfer of power by sharing detailed plans to have then Vice President Mike Pence act contrary to certain and outside of his constitutional authority and fail to count electoral votes from certain states, those that Trump erroneously claimed he had won. We know that Trump pushed Pence to follow Eastman's treacherous plan. We know that in the end, Pence didn't, and that the plot to undermine our democracy unraveled. We should also know that there is absolutely no guarantee that we don't fall in the next time bad actors bring us to the edge of the abyss. I mean, that really is that's the kind of reality of this, right? Is that we potentially got so close to this, this event, this thing happening. And yet, the fact that we didn't quite seems to be the thing that prevents people from feeling like it's a problem. And that's my concern. That's my concern. Because, we've normalized it. And we've really normalized what happened, The former president tried to take our representative democracy from us. That's the reality. And yet, it seems like, because there's no legal precedent, nothing's going to come of it. It's just going to be left, It's just going to be left. And the thing is, if it's left, then, you get the chance to do it again, don't you? If a crime is left unprosecuted, then that sets a precedent, and it also sends a signal to the people that perpetrated it that it's possible to do it again. I'm very what's the word? I'm very saddened that there, especially as an immigrant, that there isn't a system in place that prevents this. It's almost like America wants itself to fail, It really fundamentally wants, it wants itself to kind of make history or change history for this very reason. It's almost like it wants America to fail just to prove or to set a precedent, because there is no precedent, We're now also hearing that the Attorney General of New York State is asking an appeals court to uphold a lower court ruling requiring Trump to answer questions under oath after a civil investigation uncovered evidence that he may have misstated the value of assets like golf courses and skyscrapers and financial statements. I mean, is there anything that this guy does that isn't criminal? Is there anything he does? Not really. Yesterday he was lying about getting a hole-in-one at a golf course because he wanted to distract the news agenda. You had Peter Navarro, Trump advisor. He's now the investigative committee now have voted to recommend the criminal prosecution of Navarro and Dan Scavino for defying their subpoenas. So everybody that was related to Trump, everybody in his circle, they're all responsible. They're all playing a part. And John Eastman, this lawyer, is turning out to be one of the central characters in this soap opera to bring down American, the American experiment. So with the judge saying that, Trump likely committed crimes, we've heard about the militia groups, coordinated plans before the insurrection. Roger Stone was being protected by the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, and then they're indicted. And now you also got Putin and Tucker Carlson. In fact, Robert Reich wrote a very, the former Deputy Secretary for Labour. He wrote today a very interesting piece. He said that Putin criticized in a speech the West's cancel culture, for which he charged is canceling Russia, an entire 1,000-year-old country, our people. It was the third time in recent months Putin has blasted the so-called cancel culture, which is exactly what Trump and Tucker Carlson, the Republican Party, have blasted for several years. The goal of cancel culture is to make decent Americans live in fear of being fired, expelled, shamed, humiliated, and driven from society as we know it. Trump said that he accepted his party's nomination at the Republican National Convention in 2020. Tucker Carlson, one of Fox News' most prominent personalities, well, he's charged that liberals have been trying to cancel everything from Space Jam to the 4th of July, which is, of course, not true. And then Putin's fixation on transgender and gay people has also been echoed on the American right. Republican state bills aimed at limiting LGBTQ rights or discussions in schools are soaring. Last fall, months before Texas's Republican governor Greg Abbott threatened to criminalize parents who gave their transgender children gender-affirming care, Putin argued that teaching children about different gender identities was on the verge of a crime against humanity. So it does seem that, Republicans are aligning themselves with Putin. And then there's admiration for Putin himself. Just before he ordered the attack on Ukraine, Trump deemed him savvy and genius and smart for taking over a country, literally a vast, vast location, a great piece of land with a lot of people, and just walking right in. Tucker Carlson said on Fox News, "Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him?" But Carlton called Ukraine an obedient puppet of the Biden State Department and suggested Putin's invasion was nothing more than a border dispute. This is the reality now, is that the Republicans and in their surrogates, in Tucker Carlson and various right-wing characters, they are now siding with Putin. And Trump is now pitting the people against Putin or Biden. He's basically saying Biden is as bad as Putin. Pick one. Who do you want, Putin or Biden? That's Trump's rhetoric now. So Putin's lies and the lies coming from America's extreme right are mutually reinforcing. Carlson's Fox News segments show up in Russian propaganda, and when the American site InfoWars resurrected an unfounded Russian claim that the United States funded biological weapons labs in Ukraine, Putin repeated the InfoWars story. So, to conclude from all that authoritarians think alike is to miss a deeper truth. Putin, Trump, Carlson, and a growing number of right-wing commentators and activists have been promoting much of the same narrative for much of the same reason. Strongmen who divert the public's attention away from the oligarchs' hijacking of their economies towards cultural fears of being overwhelmed by the other. Putin's MO has been to fuel Russian ethnic pride and nationalism. The Trump-Carlson radical right's MO has been to fuel white American nationalism. And in both cases, strongmen and their allies have a superior, they've talked of this superior culture. They talk about blood ties and motherlands and religion, supposedly endangered by decadent forces intent on attacking and overwhelming it. So to Putin, the decadent force is the West. And as he said on Friday, domestic culture at all times protected the identity of Russia, which accepted all the best and creative but rejected the deceitful and the fleeting, that which destroyed continuity of our spiritual values, moral principles and historic meaning. Hence, a mythic justification for taking Ukraine back from a seductive but inferior Western culture that threatens to overwhelm it and Russia. Well, the Trump-Carlson white nationalist narrative is similar. America's dominant white Christian culture is endangered by black people, immigrants, and coastal elites who threaten to overwhelm it. So there we go. That's kind of a little look at what's been going on and how terrifying it is, and how Putin and Carlson in Fox and now Trump are all becoming the same effigy of themselves, And it really is becoming Putin on the right, Biden on the left. Putin versus Biden. It's almost like Trump is trying to set up a kind of World War III scenario and put his money behind Putin. And it's happening in plain sight. And still, no one seems to really join the dots. Why do we refuse to join the dots on something that is so important? I feel like something overhead here. Sometimes hear these aeroplanes and they're very low, And sometimes it's the military. They're just kind of buzzing, on purpose. Just to kind of make a point, not sure who that was. It was a private jet or something. It's 10:36 here on the West Coast. It's 1:36 Eastern. I'm Anthony Davis. I'm in Los Angeles. Sarah, you're welcome to pop in again if you want to debrief on this particular subject. You know, why it is that America seems to have no precedent for someone who is prepared to overturn the entire American system of democracy. And they're prepared to just because it does feel like nothing's happening. I mean, I know there are some things happening, but it just feels like nothing is happening.
Yeah.
Do you think that people really take seriously, because Trump's like a bit of a clown, do you think people really take seriously the fact that he is in fact a Russian asset and he really is doing Putin's bidding, and the fact that he's saying it out loud now and doesn't really care about being scrutinized?
I think we're just so jaded and numb to it all that we should be taking it seriously, but not a lot of people really are. I think people have been sounding the alarm and ringing the alarm bell for months, years. Yeah. And at this point, again, there's so many things. It's kind of where do we start?
Right.
You know what I mean? He's done committed so many crimes, and it's been so traitorous. It's sort of a huge long list of a bunch of things. So I think people want to obviously take it seriously, but there's just that's just
where
one
does
of the
that come
things.
from, that kind of American appetite that if it's not laid out very simply or in sound bites, that it's not possible to process? Where does that come from? Because yes, he's done a lot, but this is arguably the most important thing that's happened in America in 100 years. And so why is it that there's still this lethargy, this kind of lack of appetite to really get into the weeds of it? When it's so, is it that people, is this what American exceptionalism is? This idea that nothing's ever going to happen to us, and that we are the greatest country in the world, and therefore that a guy trying to overturn the election and then get Russia to do his bidding out loud doesn't really matter. We will prevail.
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. Yeah, I think we kind of think we're immune to it, even though we're not. And yeah, honestly, I wish all of obviously I want him to be indicted and convicted, and I wish people would take these things more seriously. But again, there's a lot of pressing issues right now, and there's just so much, and we just need kind of the government to work together a little bit more to get all those things done. And the fact that he clearly is a Russian asset, clearly did try to overturn the election, and people are still defending that, is really serious and really awful, and all those people should not be in power. And yeah, I don't know what it's going to take for people to take it really seriously.
Well, he is going to win again, isn't he? Let's work on the assumption that he's going to run and he's going to win. Because
don't say that.
No, but we have to say that. It's really important, because then only then are we going to start to have empathy for the consequences. And he'll be on a revenge mission if he wins. And so he'll just double down on all of those things. That there's no other candidate really in the GOP. He wields all the power. He also doesn't want to be prosecuted. So the only way to not be prosecuted is to be the president again.
Yeah. I think Ron DeSantis is the other front runner.
Yeah.
And he's becoming more popular.
Yeah, but they polled him recently, and actually he didn't do very well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I kind of feel like Ron is a bit of a diversion, because he's. I just think you can't compete with Trump. No matter, because Trump will just turn against DeSantis. They already kind of have their love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
I think we need to start working on the assumption that Trump is going to run, Trump is going to win, and then Trump is going to do all of the things that are our worst nightmare. He'll just go for it. He'll just relish the fact that he's been given this broad authority.
Then we'll no longer be a country in America.
Right.
We'll literally just cease to exist.
Yeah.
Hold on. There's a package here, and I have to get my buzzer.
You have to.
I
wonder
have
what it
to.
is.
Otherwise, they're gonna just leave it at the door. Hold on.
That's the
I know
thing
you're
about
all
living in
getting
the
a live
metropolis.
look at my life.
That's okay. The reality
All right.
is, if you don't pick it up, you ain't
Yeah.
gonna get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I hope that you're wrong and that he does get convicted or he doesn't win, because that would be detrimental for this country. I don't think we would survive that.
Yeah. I hope I'm wrong.
I think that would be incredibly awful for everyone. I don't see that going well. Yeah, that scares me a lot.
Why do we not consider these things until it's too late? You know, that's the other thing in America, isn't it? That we kind of are like, oh, that'll never happen. And then, of course, it does happen. And by which time it's too late to do anything about it. You know, it's like, that's why I'm saying let's work on the assumption that he is going to run and he is going to win. Because otherwise we're just going to be like silent observers rather than activists.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if Joe Biden's going to try and run again for a second term.
Well, he said he will. Yeah, he's already said that he will. Okay. He'll be 162 in 2024.
Oh my God.
And he wants to run with Kamala Harris as well. What do you think about her?
I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
I like her for what she does and what like she stands for and stuff, but she's also done some things in the past that I'm not fond of.
Yeah.
But you know, I want Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to just use their power a little more.
Mm-hmm.
I would love that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like she is the right person, but is so naive with the way that she presents herself that it's given her a bad rap. You know, she just, the giggling and the, you know, the kind of trying to be all kind of smiley and positive actually is not what's necessary in politics. You know, you need to be deadly serious.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, every time that she kind of giggles, that devalues her as a politician, because the right-wing media take those giggles and they cut them and clip them together and play them over and over and over and just make her look like an idiot. And it does nothing for, you know, the fact that she's female, let alone the fact that she's, you know, black or South Asian or any of these other, you know, issues. And then that's the tragedy of it, really, is that, and Biden's the same with his Tourette's, you know, just like wanting to kind of say things off the cuff that set off a chain reaction. It reminds me of See No Evil, Hear No Evil, those great films. You know?
Yeah, I mean, oh, yeah, I don't know. In like my perfect world, we would have like Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris as,
or Val Demings. I really like her. She's rather brilliant. There was a few good candidates, you know. I initially wanted it to be Kamala Harris, and then I saw her being just a little bit too, she's a bit nouveau riche. You know, she's like got a little bit too, I don't know, like, you know, she bought these pots when she was in Europe. You know, she went into a store. The right-wing media had a field day with this, and she bought like $500 worth of porcelain, or maybe it was terracotta pots or something local and lovely, you know, for the kitchen. And they scrutinized her purchase, and they put it all over the front of the newspapers and talked about it on the news endlessly. And I just thought that was naive. You know, like, if you want to spend money on pots and pans, just like get the website, do it online privately. Like, don't go and get photographed spending $500, because no one's got $500 in America. You know what I mean? It's like it was just a very naive thing to do. Doesn't help their case, does it?
Yeah, but I don't think anything at this point is really gonna like everyone's always gonna criticize what they do, so they might as well just like, you know, I want them to be as extreme as Trump, but like on the progressive side.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. It's
Yeah.
almost as if they don't make enough noise. They don't cause enough trouble. You know, they're playing by the rules too much. And actually the rules now are meant to be broken because the GOP doesn't play by the rules.
Exactly.
I might tweet to your sentence because I think it's very valuable, you know, wanting to be as much, did you say as much trouble as Trump?
Well, as extreme as Trump.
As extreme as Trump
progressive
on the
side.
progressive side, yeah. It's a very interesting way of looking at it. Because it's
That's
almost
what
like,
Bernie Sanders is.
yeah, it's the only way you kind of cut through the noise is to be a troublemaker, you know, an extremist, but for the right reasons. They could say, you know, we're pulling the plug on gas cars, you know, it's going to be electric or bust and you've got 6 months to do it, you know, anything.
Great, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready too. Okay. Listen, thank you for hanging out with me for the last few days. This is our last go together, isn't it?
Yeah, this is our last time, our last tango.
Do you normally do the show before? Is that the one that you normally do?
Yes, Get On Up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do that one every day?
Every day, Monday through Friday, we talk about the news, pop culture, everything. Yeah, it's exciting times. Yeah, tomorrow we're going to be celebrating Trans Day of Visibility, so everyone should come listen.
And you won't be recommending that people watch Tootsie or Mrs. Doubtfire to celebrate
No, we will
that?
not. No. No, we will not. We will not on that show. But yeah, it's been great hanging out with you these past few days.
Likewise. Yeah. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, we're going to spend the last few minutes of the show doing our, talking about our great female in history, which I think is Dolores Huerta today.
Yes,
so we're
yes.
Do that. Okay, thank you, Sarah.
All right, bye.
Love your work. Bye for now.
Thank you.
So yes, Dolores Huerta is our inspirational American female today, as we're discussing women in history. She was born on the 10th of April, 1930 in Dawson, New Mexico. And she was a farm worker. Her father was a farm worker. His name was Juan Fernandez. He was a farm worker and miner by trade, and was a union activist who ran for political office and won a seat on the New Mexico legislature in 1938. Well, Dolores found her calling as an organizer while serving in the leadership of the Stockton Community Service Organization. And during this time, she founded the Agricultural Workers Association, set up voter registration drives, and pressed local governments for barrio improvements. Launched the National Farm Workers Association in the spring of 1962, and through her lobbying efforts, she was successful in securing aid for dependent families and disability insurance for farm workers in the state of California in 1963. And then finally, she was key in getting past the Agricultural Labor Relations Act of 1975. This was the first law of its kind in the United States, granting farm workers in California the right to collectively organize and bargain for better wages and working conditions. Well, Robert F. Kennedy acknowledged her in helping him secure the 1968 California Democratic presidential primary, just moments before he was shot in Los Angeles. And throughout the years, she has worked to elect numerous candidates, including President Clinton, Congressman Ron DeLumes, Governor Jerry Brown, Congresswoman Hilda Solis, and Hillary Clinton. After she was attacked by police for protesting George Bush, she went to work with Feminist Majority's Feminization of Power, 50-50 by the year 2000 campaign, encouraging Latinas to run for office. Well, the campaign resulted in a significant increase in the number of women representatives at the local, state, and federal levels. She also served as national chair of the 21st Century Party, founded in 1992, on the principles that women make up 52% of the party's candidates and that officers must reflect the ethnic diversity of the nation. She has received many awards for her work, including the 2012 Presidential Medal of Freedom Award from then-President Barack Obama. I mean, this is the type of person who, in my view, is deserving of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. You may remember 2 years ago it was awarded to Rush Limbaugh, the far-right extremist talk show host. who basically, he, has caused so much division in America, and yet is responsible for, tearing families apart and the race issues and brainwashing people, and yet he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Donald Trump. So, that just kind of is a perfect example of how, partisan these things can be, So, but there's lots of coverage of Trump today, and this kind of fascinating story is unfolding of how Russia, that's currently at war with Ukraine, is also currently, colluding with Donald Trump, or he's colluding with them. And still, a year and a half after losing the election, he's still desperate to sow this misinformation and disinformation about the election. And now is asking for Vladimir Putin to help him in his mission to kind of, bring it to an end. It's kind of fascinating to me. Anyway, lots to think about. We've been spending the entire morning kind of going through the news, looking at Ukraine, discussing these stories at length. We looked at some of the morning papers together. We discussed Biden pitching a new tax on the people with more than $50 million. Manchin playing his usual game, getting ready to spike it. Trump asking Putin to release any info about Hunter Biden. Both Democrats and Republicans have criticized Trump for calling Putin a genius for his bloody military campaign in Ukraine. And this kind of ongoing, and also the Judge Carter, we talked a lot about him and how his ruling suggesting that Trump committed multiple crimes. Thank you for joining in. Overjeweled Mule and Sean and Slimby, Bashful Hair, Grandiose Fish, Elizabeth Busy Cougar, Ari, Fixed Rattlesnake says hello. Delirious Whale says hi. And Gameful Pig, Whimsical Barracuda, Conscious Bear, Aromatic Anteater, and Wacky Tiger. Thank you very much for all of your messages and for joining in this morning. I'll come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we'll spend the morning together again. Stay with Backchannel, because your pal Hal is on the way next, and he's going to entertain you for the next 2 hours. Have yourself a really good Wednesday. Bye for now.